and we have around 50 participants in the lobby.
Great.
Once you give me a go signal, I will add them. Uh, I am adding all the participants. Yes, sure, sure. I have, yeah, all the participants have been added. And we are also now live on YouTube.
Great. To all of you, thank you so much for joining in. I will just give a quick introduction who we are, what do we do. So, thanking you for collaborating with us for this presentation, the webinar today. This is the first for this series. We are representing Team G. We are a non-profit organization and we work towards creating pathways for specific learning disabilities throughout school education, higher education, and workplace. Our focus today will be talking about the inclusion of these students in the higher education sector, and therefore we have all of you representing your respective institutes over here today. While we begin, I would quickly want all of you to code and fill up a small survey that will help us better understand that where did we start at the beginning and what sort of understanding have we garnered uh, this series. So please just like you can scan this, start giving your inputs. You can raise your hands once you're done filling the survey. And we can start. in the surveys, I would request you to raise your hands. Okay, so we'll begin. Picture, I would want one of you to unself and let us know that who, by looking at the picture, do you think would have a specific learning disability?
Hello. Number one, I guess.
Looks
Can
like probably number five. We don't know.
anybody else? Quickly, anybody can try. Just give us. You can just like say a number, put it. Chat. Okay, great, thank you. What we are trying to imply through this picture is that while we're looking at a lot of people on this picture, it is absolutely impossible to be able to tell who on this particular frame has a specific learning disability, which further implies to the fact that a learning disability, a specific learning disability, is an invisible disability. It's never possible to look at a person and be able to understand, and therefore we need to understand that how can we create the support system that is required in institutions for students who have specific learning disability, because it's never evident. You can never see them in a classroom, you can never see them in a setup and be able to decipher if they have specific learning disabilities or not. So we'll quickly get into understanding specific learning disabilities, which we call SLDs, further into depth. SLDs include dyslexia, dyscalculia, dysgraphia, um, and also further grow into have subsets like attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. We'll understand what does this mean. We look at neurodiversity. These are subsets of neurodiversity, and this is actually a difference in the way people's brain function, process, and maybe learn information. One thing which we have to remember is that when we're talking about SLD, these individuals always have average or above average IQ. It's a lifelong condition that spans into families, and access to accommodation and assistive technology really helps these individuals excel throughout their lifetime. As we have discussed before, this is invisible and can only be diagnosed through psychometric testing, and because of a lot of challenges and struggles around the learning disability that we're talking about, unemployment or underemployment are the main challenges that this population faces. At least 1 in 5 people are thought to be or affected by dyslexia in some form or the other. So that's the kind of numbers that we're going to talk. We will further dive and understand that how SLDs manifest in an individual. So if you can look at the screen, there's something written on the screen, and if you can see, there's a lot of movement right here. So what it implies is that dyslexia impacts languages and your ability to decipher language, to perceive language, and it accounts for at least 80% of all SLDs. So when we talk about dyscalculia, dyslexia, dysgraphia, 80% of this population will have dyslexia. Moving ahead, talking about dyscalculia, dyscalculia impacts maths and it is present in about 5% of the population. So it mostly impacts your understanding of arithmetic formulas and being able to imply them. Going ahead, this is dysgraphia. If you can see that there are two images shared, A person with dysgraphia will have his handwriting ability and fine motor skills affected. And if you can see in the first box, that's how a person will write with dysgraphia. It's very difficult for them to stick on a line and write. Other fine motor skills like tying your shoelaces would be a challenge for people with dysgraphia. We'll just quickly dive into a video.
The refrain was उसको आता सब कुछ है ये पता नहीं एग्जाम में क्या करता है because when it came it was all over the place and for whatever reasons I'm not blaming the teachers it maybe they themselves were clueless the awareness about the dyslexia not there and when it came to the written exams I was very poor I was very good at maths my that used to fail me and for me then I never looked but I was very good at maths I gave my JEE twice I cleared both the times I wanted to do physics I came and did physics and again the thing is that JEE again is a paper which does not judge you on your on your written skill it's basically your logic and the maths so there I've excelled I was lucky enough to work for Info Edge Group, which was a startup. And these places, I mean, the thing is, if you're good, it's pure meritocracy. So if you're good, you keep getting opportunities.
So, like the video you just saw talks about and discusses the life journey of Mr. Vivek Khare, who's one of the angel investors with Zomato right now. And the point that he's trying to focus on is that, and something that we've discussed previously, that any individual they will never have their IQ affected, they'll always have average, like above average IQ. I just request every participant to mute themselves. So, Mr. Khare is emphasizing on the fact that how, in spite of the struggles and the difficulties that he faced, he was able to clear JEE twice. And we also have to focus on the fact that while their intelligence is at par, they face challenges in their written skills. We have to remember this, and when we further talk about the accommodations that can be provided to supporting students, that is one of the points that we should. Uh, Now I have two texts. I'll just request all the participants to mute themselves and only unmute when they've been asked to share their thoughts or be a part of the activity. Thank you so much. Uh, Anybody can volunteer for this particular exercise, the activity we have. We would just want somebody to quickly try and read what's written on your screen.
Can I try, ma'am?
Yes, please go ahead.
Hi, I'm Sonali. Okay, so some words I can definitely make out. I can't make out that word. So we dash our tribe at a familiar place, a body like yours and mine. It contains 100 trillion cells that make together makes together us unique. Okay.
Just
Okay.
try and read them quickly. Don't try to unlock or decipher
Yeah.
the
All
word.
right. Okay. So read just what's written. T contains 100 trillion cells that mock together G gespu of methane each of these way cells each one that has okay so my mind is playing here I get what you're saying that
Yes.
has DNA the DNA curve is exactly the same was bropusec resin.
Thank you, Sonali ma'am. Thank you, Sonali ma'am. Thank you so much for trying and helping us with this activity. So I'll just quickly show you what was written over here. This is the correct text. And why we are trying to share this activity, and thank you so much for helping us with it. And you would have experienced it yourself that sometimes the words that are presented are jumbled or mirrored, and therefore a text that should be like this looks like this to somebody with dyslexia. And this was a quick exercise just to understand the manifestation of dyslexia, which is impacting language skills. And now this another exercise. I would just again quickly want a volunteer from our participants. I would want you to read the color and not the word on the screen. Anybody who wants to volunteer can unmute, please.
I would do that.
Yes. So I'll quickly start. You have to read the color and not the word.
Sure. Um, Purple, gray, orange, yellow,
You, you'll have to
blue,
quickly try and read what's
black.
written.
Okay. Gray, red, purple, black, yellow, blue.
Yes. So thank you so much for volunteering for the activity. While ma'am took some time to be able to read the color and not the word, what happens is that if this activity is thrown at somebody with dyslexia, it will be very easy for them to either just like quote the color and not be able to read the word because their skills, their cognitive skills are making them focus on the color that they're seeing and not the word. So this is another quick exercise to understand the manifestation of SLDs. uh, Coming to the struggles, we would now want to focus on the struggles of people with dyslexia, and this is a representation of how you can understand what SLDs impact. They impact academic, life skills, and emotional well being. These are the three subsets of a triangle that you can see currently. What happens is that a child or a student at one point in their life are impacted in one of these segments of the triangle. You know, you might be struggling with your academics, you might be struggling with your life skills, you might be sometimes struggling with emotional well-being, and it could be because there has been a learning loss. This is the first time that you're learning in a specific language. You might be the first generational learner from your family, so something or the other is impacted. But when all these three are impacted together, it's certainly that it is being impacted because of a specific learning disability. So this is a small representation that all of us can map in our brain and understand that if you ever see a student struggling with all three at a similar time, it would be more than often because of a specific learning disability. Now we have to understand these challenges and how do they look like. We have spoken about how it might impact your language processing skill, how it impacts your writing skills, but SLDs more than often impact the executive functioning, which goes beyond your language processing skills. For a student, it could be a reason for poor self-esteem. There's a lot of judgment and a lot of misunderstanding that if you have a specific learning disability, you're more than often low IQ. Where else we busted the myth, it's always average and above average IQ. And this could be coming from, you know, a student struggle with the reading and writing capabilities, and this is very frustrating for a student. There's always a gap in the oral and the written performance. You will have these students who are impeccable when they're talking or when they're answering or when they're ideating. But when it comes to their answer sheets, when it comes to their assignments, you'll always see that there's a major lag in their writing skills. The other would be the memory challenges. They can easily forget tasks and deadlines, especially when there are a lot of instructions that are provided. It's very difficult for them to recollect to recollate them. The other would be very slow processing. It takes them some time to listen, process that information while reading and then write, or the other way around. So there is a little bit of lag which comes because there's a struggle while reading or there's a struggle while writing. They're sensitive to overstimulation. This is a major struggle that because of a lot of movement around them, a lot of sound, maybe light, there's there's a struggle to concentrate, and this leads to a lot of fatigue, this leads to a lot of frustration. And as we've spoken about memory challenges and overstimulation, sometimes it impacts your ability to plan tasks, be able to manage your assignment deadlines, be able to reach to classroom in times. So it's just how these struggles manifest in a student when they're on campus. We'll now try and understand that how do you what is the process of identifying students with learning disability. So as per the RPWD Act 2016, diagnosis of learning specific learning disabilities can happen only in or after third grade or 8 years of age, whichever is earlier. Screening, while is a formal diagnosis, can be done only after 8 years of age. The process is much like taking a child through an eye test for poor vision because they have regular complaints of headaches and not being interested. You might perceive these children as being lazy, but it could be something much more than these issues. As a part of screening process, we always assess not just their academic performance but also how things are impacting their day-to-day life activities and emotional well-being, again going back to the triangle, and this must be done in the primary language of the student. So another myth that we bust during this conversation is that any child who has dyslexia, any individual who has dyslexia, will have language processing issues in all the languages. So it's not just English, Hindi, Tamil, it would be in all languages that you will face this equal amount of challenges. So it will be wrong to have a child only screen in a particular language to understand if they have a specific learning disability or not. Coming to diagnosis, the diagnosis require either of the mentioned specialist, which is a pediatrician, a psychiatrist, a pediatric neurologist, or a clinic or a rehabilitation psychologist. And just breaking down the diagnosis into steps, there is assessment to just make sure that the language processing is not being impacted by visual or hearing impairment. The second would be the IQ assessment because we are saying that it is very, very important to determine the IQ. It should always be average or above average in the case of specific learning disability. And then there are further detailed specific psychometric tests which one has to take through to understand the severity. Uh, once a benchmark disability is diagnosed and confirmed, a UDID card is issued. And when we say benchmark, it has to be 40% or more, which is something that the part 3 of the diagnosis helps you to understand. And once you have your UDID, you have your access to a lot of facilities, benefits, and concessions that are being availed through the government schemes for the PWD candidates. Moving further, we need to focus on the fact that dyslexic are resilient and with the right support, they find the ways to cope and succeed. As we saw in one of the videos earlier, where Mr. Khare spoke about that, how if you're given the right format to assess your understanding of a concept, if you're given the right support, you excel. And we have another video to understand a story that focuses on how the right support helps you excel in life.
I was a cheater in class, and I'll tell you why. Because in math class, for example, the teacher would put up the sum on the table, and I would work it out in my head and have the answer ready with me. And when she would ask me, or he would ask me to show the working, I wouldn't have it, right? So they always assumed I copied it from my peer sitting next to me, and then the peer said, "No, I got the wrong answer." So this guy has figured it out in some way or form. So you went through that a few times because our brains just think differently, and we tend to understand what is being said before the other person is finished saying what they're saying. And that becomes very unnerving. I didn't know my ABCDs till the 5th grade, to be very honest. The only reason I could write my name was because there was another Kunal in my class. He wrote it, I memorized it, and I simply copied it. It was as simple as that. In the younger classes, I would sit at the back. So by the time the class finished reading the chapter twice, I had memorized it. So I would just pick up on where the person dropped off and recite from my memory. My my sister started a computer class in the 8th grade and I was in the 5th, and I got intrigued by the fact that, she was typing something on this electronic device and it was doing something magical on the screen, and I picked up on that and I started sort of spending my breaks in the computer lab bugging the teachers and the assistants to teach me what they were doing. By the time I hit my 7th grade, I was actually doing 10th grade level programming and college school projects, and that's what became my go-to thing as an out for my lack of success in academia. And the school encouraged it, my friends encouraged it, and that's when I decided right around my 8th grade to get a full-time job.
This is a very interesting life journey that we are sharing. We speak about Mr. Kunal, who had a major challenge reading or even being able to write his name. And right now, currently, he's the founder and MD of AirPay, which is a fintech and employs over 500 plus employees across 5 countries. And how did this happen? He got the right support, he was pushed in the right direction, and there was a lot of focus in trying to accelerate the sector that he was already interested in, inclined towards, and was excelling. This helps us understand the importance of the right kind of support and accommodation, and how it can actually help somebody with something that they're struggling with in one place, but also excelling in one place, and help them innovate and become like Mr. Kunal, who's right now running and leading one of the finest fintech firms. This is another thing that we would want to do as an activity. I would want all of you to maybe look around you and name one thing that is a product of dyslexic mind. Maybe you can unmute and say a word that you can look around you. If you don't know, it's okay, but just look around you and look at things that you might think is a product of a dyslexic mind.
Light bulb.
Thank you so much.
Light
That's
bulb.
That's correct.
Does it have to be an object or an activity or an act also? Like mind wandering was one put.
No, anything like one object around your product that you can see something tangible.
Okay. Then speakers, I would say they are overstimulating.
No,
Loudspeakers.
so it's a product that has been made by somebody who's dyslexic,
Oh, is
invented by
it?
somebody.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yes,
Ma'am, am I audible?
yes, you are.
I think iPhone, Apple iPhone.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
Great, great, thank you. So I think we have a little bit of understanding about inventors who had dyslexia, but we'll just look at this and understand that how dyslexia has been powering our lives. And today might be a good opportunity to be able to reiterate that fact that, as ma'am suggested and pointed out correctly, the light bulb, the phones that we use, the cars, the airplanes, your laptops or phone on which you're connecting today, these are all invented by people with dyslexia. So in our everyday life, if we look around at ourselves, we understand that an object, anything that has been created that is supporting us on a daily basis in some manner, has been an invention by a dyslexic mind. And this is another beautiful fact that we should be able to reiterate is 40% of the self-made millionaires are dyslexic. And today on our screens, we would be seeing some of the companies that are doing wonderfully well and have been the brainchild of a dyslexic mind. It's IKEA, Tesla, Walt Disney, DreamWorks. We've seen a lot of movies by them, Tommy Hilfiger, CNN, IBM, Charles Schwab's, Joe Malone. These are the few things that we have seen around us, and they have been a brainchild of a dyslexic mind. And so, coming to the fact that dyslexic thinking is a phenomenon that is driving us all forward, we need to be able to spot this and support these dyslexic thinkers within our systems. And we have to also understand that how does a mind that cannot process language manage to make such an impact? What is it that is leading to them having challenges in one side for something as basic as being able to process language, and on the other side being able to create such invention that accelerate the ease in our lives? Uh, a quote by Richard Branson, who's the founder of Virgin Groups and is also a dyslexic. I simply wouldn't be where I am today if I wasn't dyslexic. In the real world, dyslexia can be a huge advantage. Many people with dyslexia have great imagination, creativity, and problem solving skills. So he is hinting towards the fact that how dyslexic minds are able to accelerate inventions, and we'll delve deeper into this to understand that how's this happening. The dyslexic edge is a phenomena that we talk about that compromises of the following skills that we can see. People with dyslexia more than often have the capacity to visualize things around them. They work towards looking the big picture, problem solving, connecting the dots, being able to reason why a problem exists, and further innovate towards solutioning of that problem. Global studies have shown that the percentage of students with dyslexia in fields such as engineering, art, entrepreneurship are twice the percentage of individuals with dyslexia in general population. And why? Because a part of their brain and the reason how differently they are wired accelerates them towards innovating, accelerates them towards solutioning for the problems that they see around them. Now we're looking at the top universities globally are attracting a lot of students, therefore, into their campuses. Dyslexia is common at MIT, and to the extent that it is also called the MIT disease. We're looking at some global leading universities like Stanford, Brown, Yale's, MIT that have been focusing on students with disability because of their innate ability to be able to innovate. Some of the leading institutes like IITs, IIMs, and Ashoka, even in our country, are looking at and particularly focusing on the dyslexic edge that these students are able to provide and how to support them within a campus to be able to provide that sort of solutioning towards problems that exist. What is what are we doing as a country to be able to tap into this critical resource pool of dyslexic thinkers? There's a lot that has happened, and we now understand what we as a country have been doing. When it comes to a policy framework, Rights of Persons with Disability Act 2016 formally recognized specific learning disability in India for the first time in 2016. It calls us out as heterogeneous group of condition wherein there is a deficit in processing language, spoken or written, that may manifest itself as a difficulty to comprehend, speak, read, write, spell, or even do mathematical calculations, and include conditions which are perceptual disabilities, as we discussed before, like dyslexia, dysgraphia, dyscalculia, dyspraxia, and development aphasia. The mandate currently suggests 5% reservation of for PWDs in government aided institute. So there has been a mandate to accelerate the enrollment to at least 5% in the institutes for PWD students. And then looking at the new education policy, the policy is in complete consonance with the provisions of the RPWD Act 2016 and mandates that students with disabilities, including those with learning disabilities, should be enabled fully to participate in regular schooling processes from the foundational stages to the higher education, ensuring equitable access to quality education. Universities and colleges will be required to set up high quality support centers to support SEDG students to transition to higher education. So, the policy framework in the country is already mandating and asking institutes to be able to provide the right kind of support to students so that they can have equitable access to quality education. They are very clearly mandating when it comes to the higher education institute and the setup that for the government they should embark suitable funds for the education of SEDGs, set clear targets for higher gross enrollment ratios, provide more financial assistance scholarships in both public and private institutes, conduct outreach programs, and develop the support in both in terms of campuses that are more inclusive and technology so that there's better participation and therefore better learning outcomes. And this is a very logical flow that while there are a lot of suitable funds that exist, it is a right of the child to enroll and sit for an entrance exam. The idea is to conduct enough outreach so that the children understand their right. They also know the different facilities that are being provided by the government. And when we come to higher education institute, the focus and the mandate has been to create financial assistance, provide scholarship, conduct outreach, sensitize people towards whatever accommodations are existing, make the admission processes and the curriculum more inclusive, have buildings and facilities which are disabled friendly, be able to develop these bridge courses provide counseling support to students, the PW students specifically, ensure a lot of sensitization of faculty, counselors, and also students within campuses, and strictly enforce all no discrimination and anti harassment rules around, and develop institutional plans for actioning towards increase of the participants of the SEDG category within a campus. And we now need to understand that while we've been mandated to support students who struggle with specific learning disabilities and create an inclusive campus, for us it's very important for us as practitioners, as educators, to even understand the struggles in depth, and only then can you solution for the struggles. So some of the few struggles that we can look over here is on campus. Transitioning to on campus life, as all of us remember, was something new, was something overwhelming for all of us, irrespective of if we had a disability, if we had specific learning disabilities or not. And few of the problems that are very specific to students with learning disabilities could be disclosure and self advocacy. If there is not enough support provided on the campus, it becomes very difficult. A student is always in doubt that should they be disclosing, should they be self advocating, and why? Because sometimes when they do, there's a lot of rejection, there's a lot of isolation, there's a lot of bullying, there's a lot of idea about how they might be low IQ. There might be a lot of issues in terms of the people around who they exist. It's difficult to self advocate because there's not a lot of awareness. Being able to manage the daily activity independently, setting up a timetable for themselves, being able to meet the deadlines, navigating their way within the campus is difficult. And for this, more than often, they need a support system that might be lacking. And when it comes to their academic life, coping in the classroom because of note taking, because of a lot of reading, a lot of writing, it becomes difficult. Managing tasks like timely submissions, timely assignments, writing your exams, academic planning could be difficult. And therefore, there's a lot of struggle and pressure to be able to balance your college life, your social life, and your academic life, which leads to a lot of cases where there's a risk of low self esteem and you can be depressed. You could be overwhelmed because the environment is new, there's a lot of managing that needs to happen. And also because of the lack of awareness, sometimes the peer pressure is there is a very high level of anxiety in terms of how to navigate, how to take care of situations where you're overstimulated. So these are maybe the three categories in which any student who's transitioning to a higher education institute is difficult, because till now they were in their safe zone. They had a lot of support. They had been in one setup for really long. They had support from the parents, from the groups, and on campus life is a major transition that all of us face, a little bit more even for students with disability who struggle during this time. Our regulators, UGC and AICT, have come up with a very thorough guideline in terms of how to support them. And maybe we can look at the guidelines that are being provided by both UGC and AICT and then collate what could be an overarching way of supporting these students. So UGC clearly points out that transition support from school to college and graduation to post graduation is something that needs to be looked into, that needs to be supported. There needs to be a need assessment board that shall formally assess the specific needs of PWDs. So it's very important to understand the struggles and therefore have a formal assessment and also have the needs to be clarified specifically for people with disabilities and, and impart curricular skills that are more than just academic skills, and this could be social interaction, how to live on campus, a lot of other skills that of the students that they need to navigate, and have a cohesive list of scholarships and schemes that actually accelerate the enrollment of PWD students into the campus. The second set of areas where we talk about is the students' life on campus, that the infrastructure provided in the very first place should be accessible. There should be modified assignments as opposed to a very rotary form of assignments like written reports, essays, and the deadline is something that focus should be on being able to targeting and assessing the understanding of a subject being taught instead of focusing on the kind of assignment that is being provided. Accommodation during exams like preferential seating so there's no overstimulation for a student, compensatory time, a scribe if that is something that is being provided through the guidelines, then focusing on assisted and not just providing them but also training people on campus, both educators and students, in terms of how they can be incorporated to have an easy way of being able to navigate in a classroom. This could be laptops, this could be voice recorders, these could be other assistive tools like speech to text, text to speech that you can use. And then also, as one transitions out in the employment sector, it's very important to have placement and career assistance provided to these students. In terms of implementation, we need to focus on sensitization, capacity buildings at all levels. So we're talking about students who are already in the campus, faculty, admin staff, recruitment staff to be able to understand the challenges and therefore be able to provide the right guidance and accommodation. How can you have modification in the teaching learning methods? How can you incorporate UDL, universal design learning methods? How you can have multi-sensory approach? How you can have assistive technology incorporated into your teaching methods to accommodate these students? And accommodating the deadlines that you've spoken about, and awareness about the success stories, like a couple of the stories that we already saw. We should always engage with the employers to also help them understand that why these students with specific learning disability might be the right candidate when it comes to innovating, when it comes to solutioning. And then in terms of governance, we need to have administrative framework to take action specifically for students, create equal opportunity cells that can handhold not just the students but everybody who's a part of the campus. And therefore, we help strengthening the institute when it comes to being inclusive and comply with the roles and functions and ideally lead and become the units that help the transition, that helps the sustenance, and that helps the evolution of these students into the employment sector. Now we focus on the AICT guidelines, which are very similar to the sector of transitioning students' life on campus, governance and implementation. AICT focuses on promoting the admission of students with SLDs under the PWD categories. They have been transitioning uh, to help students with PWD through streamlining the admission process. and providing the accommodation. So for a student to be able to actually transition to the institute, the higher ed institute, they sit for their entrance exams, and therefore the need of being inclusive starts from the very beginning, which is our entrance exams. We need to give them the right kind of accommodation so that they can get past the first channel of transitioning. Then providing them the right disability support through scholarships, and for which they have the DSUs, the disability support units. When it comes to students' life on campus, AICT has a very comprehensive guideline. It talks about accessible infrastructure, assistive technology, and both hardware and software, and training people for these facilities that are provided. So when I talk about hardware, we could be looking at your notepads, electric notepads, laptops, iPads. And when it comes to software, there are a lot of softwares that are inbuilt and they focus on assistive tools like speech to text, text to speech. You must have heard of Audible, note taking. These are the things that are already incorporated and are training that how any of this accommodation that is being provided through these gadgets is accommodation and not a solution that helps a student cheat. We have a very beautiful example that we keep quoting, that how when we are wearing our glasses, it's an accommodation that helps us read better and it's not cheating. Wearing glasses is not cheating. Similarly, providing the right kind of assistive technology in hardware or software format or accommodation is not cheating but supporting a student with the right kind of facilities to help them adjust, to help them and give them an equitable environment to be able to operate in a higher ed institute. Then we talk about in-class support, which also focuses on accessible course material, that any material that is being provided in a classroom should be accessible. They should be in PDF formats. There should be multiple ways of a student being able to access that material and not just in a format of a tangible book. Then we focus very clearly. AICT has guidelines in terms of exam support, which talks about a scribe, 20 minutes per hours, and that is objective to the type of questions that are there, allowing computers separation of answer scripts that are there, and again focusing on career support and employer centered organization. Then we focus on implementation. SWAYAM, as most of us would be aware of, has process to train faculties for accommodation solutions. So our participants can go back and check SWAYAM. There are skills that talk about accommodation and solutions for faculties. There's a PWD database management system that monitors these standards of accessibility. And then there is a very comprehensive focus on inclusive pedagogy, training faculties in UDL strategies for both evaluating, teaching, and incorporating assistive technology. And then the last but the most important is a lot of awareness, advocacy of the rights, community outreach, and also college readiness program. The focus is that while the guidelines are mandating and providing a lot of support, it's very important for the faculties, for the practitioners to know that these supports exist, and also for the students to realize that there is a comprehensive guideline that supports their transition and their existence in these campuses. Then we focus on the governance. The AICT guideline mandates centers of learning diversity, CLDs, for students with SLDs and equal opportunity facilitation cells in all higher ed institutes. There has been a lot of encouragement for research on disabilities and investment in the research and development of assistive tech, which is currently a booming market. Then a specific budget allocation for activities promoting inclusion of PWDs on these campuses. And inclusion cells to be funded with required resources and trained manpower, again to sustain and make sure that no student because of their disability misses an opportunity to quality higher education. Then we have the National Institutional Ranking Framework, which very clearly allocates points to the parameters for outreach and inclusivity. So, our regulators have made guidelines and have mandated inclusion that now we as practitioners can focus further into that why and how can they be used to support the struggles of the students within their environments. So, there's this another video. We'll just quickly have a look at that.
Rohit was one of our early entrants into higher education. He has significant difficulties with reading and writing. The admissions committee at the college was worried whether he would be able to manage the multiple flight of stairs to his classroom. But in reality, he actually found it difficult to navigate new schedules, new systems, keeping up with his lectures, getting to his classroom on time, finding his classroom, making new friends. The list was endless. The first day he went to college, he went to the library to get his library cards, and he was pulled up for his illegible handwriting with the comment, "This is what happens when we have to fulfill quotas." Not surprisingly, Rohit struggled through the first term. He was quite miserable. He spent as little time as possible at college, and it was only regular, intensive counseling that kept him on track. His exams came along, the first term exams, and he had discovered that he'd been given extra time to finish his papers, but the seat in the hall had to be vacated because the next exam was scheduled immediately after. And he was describing this to his counselor. He says, I felt like a worm. Everybody was standing in the corridor and discussing what to do with me. The principal came along and asked what was going on. And he took a different view. He pulled up the staff for not having made adequate arrangements. And he took Rohit with him. I'm going to describe this in his own words, which he told us about later. He said, "Ma'am, he took me to his own office. He sat me down at his desk. He made space there for me. And he told me to finish my paper, take as long as I wanted. And he said, I'm sitting outside making phone calls. Don't worry, nobody's going to disturb you here." What a validation. This validation really changed his life at college. Suddenly, he was able to advocate for himself. He dived into campus activities, took part, joined some clubs. Ironically, in his last year at college, he took over a student newsletter as editor, and he made so many changes and made it so innovative that it won several awards.
So this is one of the examples where a student who was struggling with keeping up in his college had one instance of validation and support coming from a practitioner within his campus that gave him the confidence, that gave him uh, the kind of support that he needed in that particular moment to be able to excel as a student within the campus, to be able to pursue his area of interest. And this is just one small remark, an act of validation that he faced. And we right now have a very comprehensive set of guidelines that mandates us towards support, that spells out the kind of accommodations that can be provided, and therefore it contains an impeccable magnitude of support that can be provided to children and students. And how can we look at that? Why we went into the guidelines very specifically, if we have to give an overarching view of what can we do right now as practitioners when we go back, there's some things in terms of academic support that we can look at is providing accessible formats of the course material. National Digital Library is a source. SWAYAM courses are in accessible format. So maybe we can look at the accessibility of the content that is being used. Instructional aids and services like note takers, scribes, allowing the hardware, the devices in a classroom is something that can really support these students. Alternative assignment deadlines. While these students struggle in terms of collating their ideas together as an assignment or an essay, maybe they should have alternate accommodation in terms of the format of the assignments or the deadlines. Other accommodations that have been spelled out by the regulators very clearly are compensatory time, reader, distraction reduce settings, clarification on questions. That is something that can be taken care of. In terms of tutoring, counseling support, and there could be a buddy system that is provided for them to navigate through the higher ed institute when it comes to academic support that they need. In terms of on-campus support, counseling support, coaching and academic planning support is something that really helps these students flourish. Availability of accommodation based on need assessment at the time of admissions is very important for a child to get past the gates of a campus is only if you provide them the accommodation that you're ready to give them in a campus during the time of an entrance exam. Availability of on-campus champions to advocate. It's very important for a student to be able to spell out their needs for which they need to self-advocate, for which they need to disclose, and on-campus champions really support this. Mental health support is something that can be provided in terms of navigating the transition. Faculty capacity building and assigning campus buddies is something that is of great value in terms of understanding how to support these students and how to actually turn those what exist into actionables within a classroom, within a campus. Access to resources, different schemes, scholarships should be provided in terms of
சொல்லுங்க வாட்ஸ்அப் எனக்கு பிரான்ச் போட்டு டைப் பண்ணி
then in terms of students with SLD, the scholarship schemes should need to be put out very clearly. One of such schemes is Saksham, which is being run through AICT, and that's of great value. Demonstration of AT usage to understand the kind of support that assistive technology brings to a classroom, both from a practitioner's end and a student's end. There's a lot of accessible technology that can be used by a teacher within a classroom setup, and also the same assistive technology can be used by a students to be able to have their notes being taken, their assignments being taken, to follow a timetable. Assistance in making academic courses material accessible is something that is of high value because these courses still they are not accessible for no value for students with SLDs. And then focusing on the last segment, higher institute exist for the seepage of the talent that we are creating to be industry ready. And for them to be industry ready, there should be a lot of information related to placements, internships, scholarships that should be availed to students. And always make sure that these notices, the format of this information that is being put out should be accessible, should be in a digital accessible formats. Sometimes a very small instance that there could be a circular and a picture of a circular is put up on your websites. That is something that a student who uses scan technology to be able to convert a text to speech becomes very difficult. Therefore, a PDF format is the right format to upload. Then a lot of employer sensitization of the potential of students with SLDs. Like we focused on how a lot of inventors uh, provide and accelerate our lives. Then we look at a lot of innovations that are being happening. We look at a lot of entrepreneurs who are millionaires currently, and this is all happening because of the dyslexic edge, because of the dyslexic thinking, because of how their brains are wired to look at solutioning of big problems should be communicated to the employers. and relaying information to students about inclusive employers. It's very important for a student who struggles with basic day-to-day activities to understand that there are inclusive setups, there are accommodations that certain employers are also providing, and sort of create that connect. These are maybe very basic bridging the gap activities that we can quickly start within our campuses while mandating and while using the guidelines by our regulators like AICT as the benchmark. We'll further learn into what is happening globally in terms of supporting students with specific learning disabilities. MIT has an office of disability and access services, and this work towards the inclusivity of not only students but also the faculty and visitors with disability. So they're trying to create a campus that they have an office set up to support anybody and everybody with a disability on campus. They make sure equal access for students with disability while upholding the integrity of MIT's program and services. The entire focus of support when it comes to academic support is you provide them alternate ways of presenting their assignments, alternate deadlines, but you keep the rigor the same. We're not asking the students with SLD needs to have something simpler provided to them. We keep the rigor at power. We accommodate them to be able to keep up with the rigor of the course material that is being provided. So they have counseling support, they have academic support, there's a lot of assistive technology that happens. They have assistance in making course material accessible within their campuses. In terms of research, they have the McGovern Institute of Brain Research that focuses a lot on brain imaging, cognitive neuroscience, computational neuroscience, genome engineering, and etc. To be able to understand that what are the needs, where do the needs stem from. Then there are a lot of dyslexia ready interventions that they have, and they play a major role in being able to sort of accommodate students and faculties with disabilities within their campus. Then coming to Yale University, they have a Yale Center of Dyslexia and Creativity. And this also focuses mainly on research and assistive technology while creating a lot of advocacy and awareness. Uh, when it comes to assistive tech, they have consultation on technology being provided. Sheward's Dyslexia Screener, one of the screener has come up from Yale's, and this is a dyslexia screener that helps with a lot of speech to text, text to speech technology. There is again a very strong research base that focuses on interventions that can be conducted for students with dyslexia, and they have been able to do that by longitudinal studies that have been taken care of by them or monitored by them for a long term on a long term basis.
And I think what I try to do is inform the faculty of what dyslexia is. No matter how bright or accomplished or educated people have outmoded views of dyslexia. So to work with the faculty at conferences, and that's when you find out a number of the faculty are dyslexic. And I'm very fortunate that at Yale, that people who are in administration have been very, very supportive. For example, at our Yale Center, we, anybody that thinks they might have trouble learning or have dyslexia are referred. It's amazing what different stories they have and what different beliefs there are about dyslexia. So we try to speak with the faculty, have them understand, and what people were just saying. I mean, one of the things, for example, is learning a foreign language. We were seeing so many students that were working so hard, students who were dyslexic, on their foreign language requirement, and they weren't succeeding and was taking their time to work. Suggest then maybe we can have a partial waiver of the foreign language requirement so that people could take a course in English, but based on helping you to understand the country, the culture.
This is again one of a very comprehensive way of supporting a student is accommodating the curriculum. So the focus should always be in supporting uh, toward a child towards something that they have a natural bent, a natural persistence to excel instead of having them struggle with something and taking the time away from them, the cognitive ability of theirs away to act to excel and succeed uh, in a particular area of excellence. Then coming to University of California, the Office of Disability Compliance has a lot of implementation in terms of inclusion within a campus. They have a very comprehensive specific learning disability testing, counseling, and academic support. $20 million presented to clinical facilities and research development is encouraged to draw on research in neuroscience and cognition to support dyslexia through their campus. And they also focus largely on academic support through assistive tech. Then we have Stanford University. It has an Office of Accessible Education in Schwab's Learning Center. This guides undergraduate and grad students to become more efficient learners and also help the staff community to integrate the different technology and ways of academic support to help students with disability. They also conduct research programs called Reading and Dyslexia Research Program that focuses on dyslexic research. Then we have within our country, we have Ashoka University. They have a very comprehensive support towards inclusion being provided by their Office of Learning Support. And this focuses on, again, accessible learning material, bridge support systems, exam accommodation. They also have consultation and make sure that the right kind of assistive technology is provided to students as per their specific needs. Then there's
it is the key, basically, being able to design a curriculum that where we all kind of strive. And I guess that at university, it can be quite difficult because it is really engaging a variety of academics, a variety of courses, and they all have the different challenges. But for example, exams can be difficult, not just one way, but so for example, allowing people to show what they know. Of course, it is dependent on the course, but just introducing a different way of assessment.
I think this particular video reiterated on the fact that there's a need to reassess the evaluation formats, how we want to assess the understanding of students, and it does not have to just stick to reading format, but we could have multiple ways of accommodating and modifying the way we assess within a classroom. I think the last few examples we would want to focus on of institutes who are doing a very good job of creating inclusive campuses is again IIM Bangalore. They focus a lot of inclusive pedagogy. They actually provide a different timeline without having to take away the rigor to their courses. So of course that is a year long, can be a year and a half long with somebody with a specific learning disability, keeping the rigor. And we want to focus then inclusive classrooms are, if they're designed well, with a proper intervention, with a proper accommodation, they will just not help students with SLDs, but they're going to help all students learn better. Anything which has alternate way of teaching, accessible course material, assist technology is using on the 20% of your class that might have certain, they're going to help accelerate the learning outcomes of all students, and that is something that we should remember while trying to provide for these support. And a quick preview into, once we go back from today's session, what are the top 5 things that we should look at as practitioners? We can start with inclusive admissions, then in trying and accelerating the PWD category enrollment within our systems, tracking the success stories and understanding that how did they become those success stories that they are today, working around sensitization, awareness, not just with faculty, but your admin staff, with your student bodies, or with in classroom understanding of how a student can also support his or her peer. Understanding accommodation, focusing on the two important C's: classroom accommodation, curriculum accommodation, trying and create something around a structure that helps in terms of providing the equal opportunity, uh, supporting learning diversity in your campuses, and consciously building a culture of inclusion to therefore say that yes, we run inclusive campuses when it comes to higher education. We certainly want to do all of this so that we do not miss out the next genius. Make sure that the next Elon Musk, the Steve Jobs, the Walt Disney's coming out of our institutes because of the right accommodation and support we provided. And that's all from our end. Thank you so much. I now would want to hand over this to uh, Dr. Saxena and thank him on the behalf of our entire team for being so supportive, for helping us and giving us this opportunity to conduct the webinar. Over to you, sir.
On the behalf of Dr. Saxena, myself, Garima Rohela, will lead for the next few words. I hope we had a great session on disability awareness, and the cause of differently able students are very important for AICT. I'm basically from AICT, I'm director in AICT. The cause of differently able students are very important for AICT, and AICT wants to make sure that all PWD students are aware of opportunity and initiatives for their growth and learning process. And AICT always committed to provide equal opportunity for everyone. From the last 2 years, AICT had conducted many webinars on PWD students. In 2021, AICT organized two webinars on dyslexia, and with the panelists Ms. Rama Tandon, Ms. Noopur Jhunjhunwala, and Mr. Vivek Hare, who expressed their views on the problems related to dyslexia and importance of awareness regarding it. In second session in 2021, that webinar was also on dyslexia, where Dr. Indumati Rao identified the areas needed for improvement for inclusion of dyslexia children with SLD and helped figuring out traits at early stages that would help children in need. Shri Balandev Sharma ji also shared some online tools for dyslexia. Last year also, AICT had conducted the 5 webinars on inclusion of specific disability in university and educational institutes. Currently, AICT is offering a scheme named Saksham, which is also meant for disabled students, PWD students. And finally, now I would like to thank you, Change Inc., which is the organization that is involved in spreading the awareness about the disability awareness in universities and educational institutions with hand holding with AICT. And on the behalf of AICT, finally, I thank you for making this webinar successful. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Garima ma'am. Thank you for supporting us and handholding for arranging the series.
Welcome,
Thank you
welcome.
so much.
Welcome, Prajita.
There are some people who are having some doubts. Can we start taking those?
Yeah, we have 5 minutes. Maybe we can address a couple of them.
Sure, sure, sure. Okay.
Dr. Hemlata, I can see your hand raised.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. Ma'am, I just want to understand if we really want to have all these specially disabled candidates to be included in higher education. So though you said that, when application comes, we cannot identify whether they are facing all these things. So how do we select them or how do we identify them initially when we are taking the admissions?
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for raising that question. So a lot of candidates who apply for entrance exam of a particular higher education institute or a stream under the PWD category, they need to be diagnosed before that. Only once you have your diagnosis and your disability certificate in place can you apply under the PWD quota. So these students that we're talking about are diagnosed. If there are students that if you remember the triangle we talk about, if you feel that a student particularly might be impacted in all those three sectors and might have a possible specific learning disability, then you can always guide them for a psychometric analysis, and that is how they can understand. So there are two ways. If you talk about students coming in, then these students who apply under PWD category are already diagnosed. If you have students already on campus who you think might be struggling with a specific learning disability, you can always direct them for a formal diagnosis.
And just one more question, ma'am. How is there any center which grooms teachers how to handle them? Because teachers need to balance. So are there learning centers which grooms teachers to handle such students?
Okay. So there are courses, as we said, that SWAYAM has a courses and there are guidelines, but there is no specific institute that will handhold you to understand. Basically, if you see certain struggles that your student might be facing, you can always forward them for a screening and then further for a diagnosis.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
You're most welcome. Arvind ji, I can see your hand raised.
So my name is Dr. Arvind Golia, and very nice and very informative presentation. Good job. I have a request. Is it possible for you to share your presentation so we can talk to our peers and kind of discuss this and elaborate in our own institutes?
Sorry, I think there is some connectivity issue. We not really like there's some lag in what you're saying. If you could repeat yourself, please.
So I request that, is it possible for you to email us your presentation so we can talk in our institute, so we can share this information with our peers and colleagues?
Definitely, sir. I think because this was a live session, and if you go to the AICT YouTube handle, you will find our presentation there.
Thanks a lot. Thank you. Very well. Thank you.
Also, there's a point by Miss Revati that's put in the chat in terms of parents do not accept their child as SLDs, and it is quite difficult for us to help them. Therefore, ma'am, the idea is that by default, we make our classrooms, our campuses inclusive so that no child struggles to learn, and we accommodate everybody irrespective of their diagnosis. We are trying and providing the setup, the pedagogy, the curriculum, the alternative methods of assessment in a classroom, so that we are trying and accommodating each and every child in a classroom. Our next session is going to be on the coming Wednesday for the same timeline. So if you would want to rejoin, or if you would want to have other representatives from your institutes to join, you're more than welcome. The details are already on the AICP social media.
5 minutes. 5 minutes.
JCJ, I can see your hand raised. I think this is the last question we take because we are already on our time scale.
Hello, ma'am.
Yes.
Your presentation was very good. I just want to know, we come under Anna University. So when any student needs help, first thing is the child's parent has to accept. If the child's parent is not accepting that the child has some difficulty, it is also difficult for us to get the permission from Anna University for any scribe or extra time or any other extra help. So what could be done about this?
So there are two things over here. One is that if the child has a certificate and a diagnosis, a formal diagnosis, only through that can they get the accommodation when it comes to the exam accommodation. And in terms of parents, if you're looking at a mindset shift that we want to achieve, then there has to be multi that your college can specifically conduct with parents. And only then, like, if a person gets to know that their child is struggling, the first reaction is that they're scared, they don't want to agree, there's a lot of denial. But once they know that through the right accommodation, the child can be an achiever, an inventor, and can just lead a very good on campus life and have amazing learning outcomes. And if you discuss a lot of success stories, I think that fear subsides and there's a natural mindset shift, there's a behavioral shift in terms of accepting the struggles of the children. So that would be one.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
I we are thanking everybody again, especially AICT, for handholding us to collaborate for this webinar. I think we'll be meeting again on the coming Friday for the next session.
Thank you, Prajita.
Thank
that
you.
was really a nice session and informative also.